Hi, everybody. My name is Noah Weston. Um, I am been part of the Bay Ridge community for almost 15 years, with a brief digression into Bensonhurst for a little while, but in the district for about 15 years. Um, I'll try to make this brief because I want to give a lot of time for questions. But as the grandson of Holocaust survivors, as a queer man, politics have always been really deeply personal for me. And it's what's led me to things like, leading canvases for the Hot Aurelia team campaign back in 2017 to, helping organize responses to white supremacy and Islamophobia in the district, doing protest safety for the defund movement, and, generally just trying to stand up for what's right and put my body on the line for the things important to me. And it's what's also led me to run for district leader, because we deserve better than the party that we got right now. And we need a party that can energize voters around the things that the majority of us all want: universal health care, universal housing, universal free public education, through the higher education level. And we need a party that develops leaders constantly and doesn't just prematurely cede ground to the other side or throw its hands in the air and say, oh, well, we got to be all things to all people, and ultimately stand up for nothing. So what I'm going to do is create community power instead of consolidating personal power, because that's kind of right now what is your choice for this seat. I don't come from the machine. I don't work for anybody's office. This is going to be the one thing I run for, because I want to be part of a larger movement in this district to break this stale pipeline that we got right now. Because right now it's elected official shortly after replaced by a staffer from that elected official, and it just is stagnant, and it alienates communities and neighborhoods from having a real say in how they are governed. So we got to blow this pipeline up, and I'm the dynamite as far as I could, I'm concerned. And I'm not going in there to just burnish my credentials to run for assembly or something. I want to be the one that helps cultivate the person who does that. I want to, instead of going to that, stale crop of machine politicians and staffers and consultants, I want to pick out that person who's holding, the megaphone at the, Palestinian rally to stand up and run for office. That's the type of person who needs to speak up for this neighborhood and stand and represent this neighborhood, instead of the same old thing that we've had. I hear a lot about, how this district is going red, or becoming more Republican, when in actuality, if you look at party registration, you look at voting patterns, it's more that the people who would vote for Democrats have just kind of gotten discouraged or given up. And that's because they don't have people that they believe in or get them excited about anything. And back in the Hot Aurelia team campaign, we saw the makings of what could be. And I want to help others who I'm running on the slate with fulfill that promise and deliver on what that could have been, a governance by the community. So, a couple of things I'm going to do if elected, first of which is, as district leader, just talking about like the most explicitly stipulated responsibilities. I will not support anyone for the chair who is an elected official. I think that needs to be a distinct relationship. The people who run the party should not be holding elected office in other areas. I also won't support anyone who doesn't stand up for real progressive values. We need someone who has community-centered values. Right now, some of the biggest funding sources of the Brooklyn Democratic Party are charter schools, developers, and also via that charter school money sort of trail, Walmart, effectively. And that's grotesque, and we should stand up for better. So replacing the party leadership and the people who are, building this party and resourcing this party with people who actually align with our values, that's first. And also, separate from responsibilities like that, I want to launch a deep canvassing operation through the entire district to get a real sense of what people stand for and what they care about, instead of just waiting for them to come to us. Because right now we have this horrible, constituent services are important, but right now constituent services for a lot of politicians is just a way for them to accumulate little favors they cash in later, and doesn't actually have to do with bettering the quality of life of people or giving them agency and empowering them to organize for the things they care about. And I hate that's, we got to end that. And I think this deep canvassing operation is one way to do that, to hear what people want, and also let them know, like, well, you can fight for that. And here's how we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to organize your building. We're going to organize the people who go to your park and feel like it needs to be, maintained and safer, instead of the usual, like, I'll make a phone call type of thing. That's got to end. It's disempowering, and it's just for the politicians, reelection. And also, I want to recruit candidates. Like I said, I've alluded to already. I want to recruit candidates who represent neighborhoods and who will organize their neighborhoods for the fights that we face now and the future. So anyway, that's what I'm hoping to do, and with your help, I'm looking forward to doing it. So, any questions y'all got? I'm fully wide open.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weston. So we'll now have a few minutes for questions. I see Sarah and then Matt.
All right. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
so I wanted to first ask if you'll sign our pledge to support the New York Health Act, which would provide single payer to all New Yorkers.
Yep.
And the second part of that question is, in order to pass the New York Health Act, we do need a broad coalition of community members and local electeds. How would you plan to work with folks who maybe don't share your exact views, but who do share the same goals?
So you mean the people who share, but do share the goals of something like the New York Health Act, but maybe don't align with on other things, or just don't even agree with the New York Health Act?
The first one. So for example, Rodney Bichette had honored our deceased executive committee member Ellen Belofsky recently for her advocacy on the New York Health Campaign, and she has been a very strong proponent of the New York Health Act. She is a co-sponsor of the bill, but we, for example, don't necessarily agree with everything else that she does politically.
Totally. Yeah. So I would say this. It's tricky because with something like the New York Health Act, which I've long been a supporter of, I've been in lobby meetings to push for it. I've been in a room with Andrew Granardis trying to figure out why the heck he wasn't initially on board. So we helped drag him on that a little bit. And I work in the same building as NISNA. So like I'm I work with the New York Immigration Coalition. And I was on the organizing committee of the South Brooklyn DSA branch. So very familiar with the act, supporter of it, as well as also national single payer, if we can get that. I'm happy to engage with folks on common ground, even if we don't share all the same values. I mean, I am very left. I will already have to engage with folks who I don't share a lot of, certain positions with, so that's fine. I don't, just because I have very strong beliefs and will ride for them, doesn't mean that I will not work with people on things that are unequivocally good that we can agree on, just to let you know that. So I, for instance, I mean, there are folks among like New King's Democrats who I'm going to happily organize with, enthusiastically organize with on the county committee, who I probably am still miles to the left of on a bunch of stuff. So that's fine. I always recognize where things are important to like just strategically prioritize common ground. Yeah. And I also someone who's like, I'm in Bay Ridge and I'm a radical leftist. So like I've already had to, talk to people who, we might agree on 30% of the things, but still it's an important 30%.
And also I appreciate that y'all have a pledge for the New York Health Act. That's wonderful.
Matt, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Weston, pleasure to meet you. Thank you for speaking with us. It sounds like you're for some form of reform of the Brooklyn Democratic Party. Is there any particular group or organization that's supporting your run for DL? And go ahead.
So I have, my endorsement pitch is in its infancy, sort of. So like, this is sort of my first wave of seeking and hopefully getting endorsements. So I've made my pitch to Bay Ridge Democrats, to y'all, making a pitch to Lambda, Yala Brooklyn. New Kings ultimately decided to sit it out. I think I probably would have potentially gotten that had they not felt like there were some like political considerations they wanted to be mindful of and play it safe, which I respect and I understand. Like I will also so presently I like I said, this outreach to organizations to get endorsements very early for me. And then hopefully I will accumulate a bunch. But also just so y'all know, even if I'm not endorsed by a particular group, but I still share their principles, I'm going to organize with them if I win. Or if I'm not, even if I don't win this and I'm working with them on other things, I don't hold grudges like that. We need to win the future. It's more important than me getting an endorsement at the end of the day.
Excellent. And the other question is, if at a point in the future we're able to remove the developers and the whoever else shouldn't be in there with the Brooklyn Democratic Party, where does the funding comes from? Where's the money come from after that?
I think it needs to come from the people, because it's not, I think that's more of a matter of I think just precedent and custom. The reason that it's a bunch of trash entities that are, funding it right now is just, that's how it's been. Just as in a lot, the sort of, we didn't always live in this $27 a donor Bernie Sanders paradigm either. There was a time where it was just sort of if you had a bunch of money, you donated. If you didn't have enough money, a bunch of money, it didn't even occur to you necessarily. My little bit of money can go a long way, and the party would reach out to you in as a small donor. So I think we just have to start. And I just they're not doing that. That's just not even on their mind. Because the dirty money is easy and it pays the bills. Doesn't even pay the, and the funny thing at the end of the day is it's that type of money that as far as what it takes to win elections and hold seats, the amount of money that's being raised for the Brooklyn Democratic Party isn't some crazy figure, and it just ends up being what looks like just sort of a kind of a pact between special interests and political entities. It just looks like just sort of a nod and a wink, you got us, right? Which is worse. It'd be one thing if this money was being used to wage tough fights and hold on to contested seats. That's not even what's happening. So,
all right, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Noah. That's unfortunately the end of time we have for questions.
Okay.
But thanks so much for being with us. As I asked
you.
other candidates, if people here are interested in getting in touch with you, your campaign, what is the best way for them to do that?
You can either, there's a contact section of my website, noahweston.com. You can email me, info@noahweston.com. Heck, I will in the chat give y'all my phone number if you want to call or text me on follow-up questions. And I'm pretty easy to contact and hope to, work with y'all more regardless of the outcome. So keep fighting a good fight.
Thank you so much.